Welcome to Vale la Pena. In English, that's worth your while. I'm your host, Cynthia Ribas. This is a show where we get to do some grassroots philanthropy together. In all episodes, we'll feature nonprofit organizations engaged in inspiring projects for people, animals, and the environment. Some guests will be representatives of those organizations, and they'll share with us more about initiatives they're working on and ways we can participate. Check the show notes for opportunities to impact these humanitarian causes together. You can find this show through my website at www.ribaslegal.com and on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Now, please join me for Vale la Pena.
All that I'm talking about is underlies why I challenge you to, talk more about how you think we might be able to do that, talk across those differences at some point. I don't yet see that pathway.
Okay, that's a perfect segue, because I hope to bring something that might provide a little hope and get us at least in the right direction. And that would be, so I think it's important for all of us to have heroes. And as you mentioned earlier, Rich, Bryan Stevenson is one of mine. I commonly will say, Bryan, there's in the world of lawyers who are alive, I have heroes who are legal, who are no longer with us. But the ones who are alive, I tend to say, you can pretty much ask any lawyer and they'll tell you. There's Bryan Stevenson. Okay, we got to put Barack in there. And then there's a giant gap. And then there's the rest of us.
He's an amazing man. Yeah.
So back to Bryan. If you're ever watching TV and you happen to see there's someone who's been wrongly accused of murder and been on death row for 30 plus years, you can bet one of two organizations is involved. It's either the Equal Justice Initiative, which is Bryan's organization, or the Innocence Project, which we will be featuring in another episode because we love them too. And these people do such inspired work. In Bryan's case, he's Harvard-trained lawyer, could have gone anywhere, set up his practice in Montgomery, Alabama to serve the most underserved. Alabama, I believe it fights with Texas in terms of the per capita number of people the state kills legally through capital punishment. And in Alabama, and hopefully someone's going to fact check me from EJI, but I believe this is still true. They don't have defense for persons on death row. So Bryan's organization is who you go to because that is what they provide, because it's not otherwise provided by the state of Alabama. So just to say a word about EJI, it's grown immeasurably, and they have many initiatives. And I invite you to go to their website, which is eji.org. It'll be in the show notes. You'll see they have different initiatives, and one, which answers your question, Rich, about how in the world do we get through some of this impasse, has to do with education. They do beautiful work in terms of actually having studied and archived how did we get from slavery to where we are now. And they actually have an entire museum that will, through different media, very eloquently walk you through how we went from the civil rights era, the Jim Crow laws, up until they're one of two organizations that track lynchings, which are just a horrific phenomenon when you think about it. But in the day, apparently lynchings became so popular, people would go like a sporting event, and they would want to take a piece of flesh out of the person that was being lynched as like a little keepsake. And the mobs got so out of control that, in a sense, if you listen to Bryan, who speaks this all so much more clearly, he goes through step by step how we've kind of, as a matter of mob control, we've kind of brought that in-house now. So now the government kills with authority, but it's an inside job. So you really get to see it if you're in prison. You get to see how it's mostly Black persons and brown persons.
Yeah, mostly by mostly like in a huge, largest percentage of who is over indicted, I'll call it. But
right. And then, of course, the legal system is humans, and there's all kinds of error at all different steps in the process. And so when you're looking at death row, one of the stats, at least this is true, I have a couple of my favorite books here with me because I'm just that kind of a geek. This is The Sun Does Shine. This is one of Bryan's clients who served 30 years on death row and was finally freed. And in the back of it, you're in tears through the whole book, but then you get to the back and they literally name all the people as of the print date who are sitting on death row. And then the stats as of this, which I believe this one came out in 2018. Yeah, it was in Oprah's book club in 2018. 1 in 10 is wrongly there.
There's a statistic.
Error. Yeah.
There's a statistic that sounds shocking, but there's no telling if it's even more than that, because our system is truly so broken. And here's where I'd like to take us a little deeper.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's even just about the most time invested, lawyer invested, what people think of as powerful consequences associated with it, death row cases that we can talk about. These people who were convicted of a crime for which they were sentenced to die get whatever attention they get. And we know, period, that their convictions are often corrupt, that participants have agendas that are outside of what the legal system is supposed to do in order to find out who's guilty and who isn't. But this enormous destruction of a life, killing somebody for a crime, gets some attention from the Innocence Project, from the Equal Justice Initiative, etc. And we talk about these statistics that you just read, maybe 10% of them. Think about, and I don't want to bring everybody down, but think about those that aren't convicted or sentenced to death. There's only a small percentage of the, more than anyone else in the world, American conviction rate of, 260,000 people in prison, or some insane number. Below that very, very small percentage of people who are convicted to die, which deserve every bit of the attention from these groups, the Equal Justice Initiative and et cetera, lies everyone else who was subject to this broken legal system of which you are a shining light. Lawyers can only do as much as they can do, truly, because the system is set up in so many ways to be biased, to be corrupt, etc. But anything below death penalty, what attention do they get? You get 30 years, you get 25 years, you get 10 years, 25 years for that joint. You get whatever your sentence is. And let me tell you, mine was 51 months and then 9 more months, whatever. It's long. The length isn't really even my primary concern, although the lengths of our sentences are longer than anyone else in the world, any of the industrialized nations who know what punishment is, those people get no attention. Those people get no one reviewing what happened in their cases that may have moved the system away from its true north and led them to a false or wrongful conviction. So if we pay all of that attention to those that number of death penalty convictions and none to all of those people, lives are still destroyed, families are still destroyed, and the country as a whole suffers in ways that people aren't even talking about, just innumerable ways. I mean, the least of us who are prepared to engage in that system end up getting put into it, required to pay hundreds of dollars a month just in order to make phone calls to their family. So the families end up fronting that money and go into debt beyond description, and the people inside get depressed because they can't afford to, and they're taking food out of their kids' mouths. I mean, I can go on and on and on and on and on with the details. I don't even want to, but I could. My point is that there has to be some way in which we address underlying issues about who we are as humans, that this is how we treat one another. And I haven't found that way yet. I don't know how to bridge that gap, because there are so many Americans who stand there and say things like, criminal, you got what you deserved. Think they know. This is why I'm so stuck on Reality Matters. Once you think you know something and you're so solid about that, that's when you ought to start questioning the most. Wait a minute. Why am I so convinced? Why do I believe that so strongly? What might I be missing? That's when I call you intelligent. That's when I think we have potential to learn, and I don't see it often.
Well, back to EJI, they have
Okay.
other initiatives.
Yeah.
One has to do with criminal justice reform, which is a giant topic. You've touched on some of the problems, and they tend to hit on one that is still a problem, where we will try and convict minors in some states as adults, which is just horrific. There's a lot of science now about how teens' brains are still developing. And so to take a 17-year-old and try them as if they were an adult is just inhumane in all ways. They also have some, there are other groups that I will hopefully get to speak to in this podcast that are engaged in restorative justice, which is a really exciting development that really looks at what you have pointed to, which is the disconnect between punishment and crime. There are a number of inroads. I do think the world is finally starting to realize prosecutorial misconduct is a problem.
It's a real thing.
Being an AUSA is a prestigious and heady, you're the lawyer for the United States of America. That's an exciting title. And once upon a time, just notions of integrity were enough to keep all those persons in line. That has degraded over time. And just as we need checks and balances everywhere else, there is now more effort to look at prosecutorial misconduct issues. So I do think slowly, very, very slowly. There's also the problem of the prison industrial complex, which is really it's all about a profit motive. Keep those prisons beds full. Like even when, if you, so my very favorite book, Back to Bryan, is actually this one. He published it in 2014. It's Just Mercy. And highly recommend it. It's so good that they recently released a movie about it with A-list celebrities in there. And I don't want to say a whole lot about the movie except grab a Kleenex box and go see it. And among other things in there, what you see there, back to the prison industrial complex, part of the issue there is, as in that movie, even after it's determined the person is wrongly convicted, you would think that you could just present that to the warden and the warden would go, "Oh, thanks, Cynthia. We're going to let that guy go." No, they will fight you and 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 fight you.
For years.
For
Years.
years. And which is why, like, someone like Bryan, he can even, if you were talking to him about his career, he literally sometimes has clients who wind up being killed, and he goes to that moment, because of course they want their lawyer there. And of course he's the kind of guy that goes. And somehow he gets up the next day and goes back to work. I just am like, but he does that because he says hope is really, you have to keep the forward moving fight. You have to keep going. You have to keep, there is progress. The arc of justice is bending. We are moving in the right direction. It's just hard to be patient with it at times.
I like to believe that, and I think hard to be patient is a really good description. I mean, even though we are making progress, I'll give you that, we have yet as a country to decide whether people are sent to prison as punishment or to be punished. And I'd love your audience to think about that for just a minute. I mean, that's an important decision, and we have not made it. And so, having not decided whether people are sent to prison as punishment, and that's their punishment, they're in prison, or they're sent to be punished, means that those humans who have roles as guards, prison officials, etc., decide for themselves. Imagine how that works.
Right. And one of the things that's also so heartbreaking to me, because I get to see it, I've seen it now for so many people, is they commit the crime or they don't commit the crime. They serve the sentence either which way. Now they have allegedly survived all of that. Life as they knew it is completely destroyed. They're in a new chapter trying to recreate life. And even then, they continue, like how we don't give people a chance after they serve prison, and the difficulty of getting a first job and all the probation complications. And it's like you get punished and punished and punished, and you continue to be punished
Permanently. So,
Yeah.
getting personal again, people don't know this. Americans don't know it, don't think about it, don't have room for it. There's only so much you can prioritize in your brain, which is why I think if we can raise any money somehow for Equal Justice Initiative, I couldn't be happier. But so you get out of prison. I've been out of prison. I've been finished with probation for well over a decade now, I guess. Have I? Yeah. I still get letters every now and then. So I'm a veteran. I served 5 years in the military honorably. I was in the Army. I went to West Point, et cetera. This is all pre-survivor, et cetera. I got a letter from USAA, the wonderful insurance company who insures military associated people, saying, we don't want you and please don't apply again. And when I called to find out what the heck are you talking about, that was the first letter I got. They wouldn't say. And, some pushing, calling again, getting another person, approaching him with a different attitude, and then, et cetera. I got, well, there's something on your record. Oh, felon. Convicted of attempting to evade taxes that were never assessed until 10 years after I was out of prison. No, we don't want you. So my point being, it isn't even when you finished thinking it's done, the probation. Here we are 22 years beyond the incident of which I was convicted, even though I was innocent. Boom. Still, the consequences go on. And it's not just USAA. As time went on, I got letters from different banks and organizations. Just once somehow that thing, that whatever it is, the identifier that pops up in their records that shows that you had been convicted, boom, they don't want you to participate. And so you then look for an insurance company who costs you more and who doesn't give you the benefits of having been a veteran, et cetera, et cetera. And this is just in all walks of life. This is what happens when we convict somebody here in America. We don't have any sense of them being worthy people, even if they did do that of which they were convicted, who want to move on and to be contributors of society. We just feel better about ourselves in general if we show disdain for them and maintain that disdain. And there's something very, very wrong about that for our race, for humanity. And so talking about it makes me happy because people are uncomfortable, and I like making people uncomfortable if it's true.
Well, in one of Bryan's inspired quotes, something he says different ways, but it is always that we are all more than our worst deed.
Right.
Because all of us, if we look at our life, we have a moment or moments that are not, and that, they're not our best. And we're all more than that. We're all still human beings. And so then you get into the discussion of when there is a crime, what is proper punishment? But I think most anyone would agree at some point it needs to end. If there was a real crime and there is appropriate punishment and it is satisfied, we need to then give that person an opportunity to
contribute.
Yeah, to live again, get back into the game of living.
Sure.
And we destroy a lot of our community this way.
We do. And the community we destroy are those most disadvantaged, least able to support themselves anyway, typically. And I think that's why these organizations are so needed. I can fight for myself. I don't care if you feel sorry for me. I don't care if you think I attempted to evade taxes or not. I was sentenced to more time in prison than anyone in U.S. history for the amounts that the prosecutors made up and claimed that I attempted to evade, because I didn't attempt to evade anything. But I don't care. It's over. It's a part of my history. I don't care, here I go again, what people think. I can't waste my time expecting that anyone will really know me who's not a part of my life. So I don't bother with that, and I'm healthy enough that I don't take it on and let that negativity that can be pervasive undermine what I might do in life. But unfortunately, we aren't all that healthy. We aren't all that educated. We'll go back to you. That's where we, I think, converge in our ideas. Where all of this can be looked at with some hope. But I don't know how to inspire more education. There are financial requirements. There are cultural blocks to being as educated as might be helpful. It's a tough thing, but I love that it's part of the Equal Justice Initiative. I love everything they do.
Yeah, we're going to have to bring some things to a close, but I want to just say a couple more EJI initiatives and projects you might want to participate in. 1, watch the movie. You'll love it. 2, catch at least the trailer. It's all in the show notes. 3, listen to Bryan's TED Talk. It's 10 years old now. you might want to hear all the many things he says more recently as well. Post George Floyd, he has a lot of really great things to say. But that TED Talk where he's speaking about injustice is a classic. Tune into that. It's in the show notes. And then he also has a project, the EJI has a project where they track lynchings. In fact, if we could really quick just put that slide up, please, that shows the lynchings in America.
This is good data. You'll enjoy seeing just the number of
just
them.
to see it. Yeah, and I know some of you are listening, so you just have to find the visual for this. But this comes from EJI. It's on their website. And they've been tracking all of these people. And a lot of them were lynched for things like, might be a Black young man who looked at a white woman. I mean, we're talking really horrific deaths here. And it keeps going. And one of the things that they do is they have this community marker project. There we go. There are more, right? That can't even be documented.
Right. Those were 2,000 documented across the screen. There were so many, it looked like those flights during the busiest day of the year where you can't even see the country, but this was across the southern, southeastern corner. And that was just for your audience. That graphic depicted only a period between 1865 and 1876. That doesn't show anything thereafter or prior to that.
Right, or even like so this project of the community markings, what they do is, a lot in the South still has all kinds of statutes and memorabilia for the Confederacy. And what they do in the community marker project is they put a little marker where the person was lynched. They also even have teams that will go and dig up the soil to get the DNA and the blood of the person in a jar. And you can go to the museums that EJI actually has two. Well, one is it's called the Memorial for Peace and Justice, and the other one is the Legacy Museum. And you can see all these jars of soil taken where someone was lynched. And then they also acknowledge in each county all the persons who were lynched in that county. I was so inspired by that project. I, of course, have been in communication with them about, well, let's do it here in LA where I live. And it hasn't really happened yet, but I am going to be engaged in that. For whatever reason, we tended to lynch brown people more than Black people over here on the West Side. So they're not showing up in that graphic.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Yeah, yeah. So,
yeah.
but so you can be looking, that's another, obviously donations to EJI are very requested and welcome and needed. But if you want to also participate, they have many other projects that I think you'll find fascinating, and I invite you to check out the show notes. I do have to wrap it up, but go ahead. If there's some last comments you want to make, Rich.
There is. And overall, educate yourself. Try to have an open mind and think about what you might not know about a particular concept related to this topic or any other. But if you think you've already got it down, you already know it, you're not likely to learn what's really going on or how it changes or how difficult it is. And I feel sad for folks who are so convinced that they know. And I know that's ironic to some folks who are survivor watchers who think of me as arrogant. I welcome your perception, and I'd love to talk about how I don't think that's true, but perhaps it is. I'll have to keep an open mind. Please do so yourselves. Oh my gosh, I love being with you, Cynthia. Thank you.
Oh yeah, such a joy. I just can't thank you enough. truly. And for all the listeners, I thank you also for tuning in to Vale la Pena. I hope this has been worth your while. I hope you engage with EJI in a meaningful way. And I thank you for any of your feedback. Feel free to comment. And until the next time, okay, we'll see you. Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Vale la Pena. Please join us in making an impact together for people, animals, and the environment. Details in the show notes. You can find this show through my website at www.ribaslegal.com and on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. I'm your host, Cynthia Ribas, and I welcome and thank you for your feedback, comments, questions, and sharing this show with others.